Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a first submission by Chrissy of her horse Sloane. Sloane's a 5-year-old they've had under saddle for about a year and a half, she said, bringing her along. But they've had some concerns about his back as the horse shows a pronounced hunter's bump there, which of course, as we know, can lead to kissing spine. So somewhere along this line, this horse didn't get enough work as a youngster, got the wrong kind of work when it was very young, or simply didn't get enough exercise, which is often what we see today, people not realizing that horses really need to be in large open pastures in order to develop correctly as young horses. We saw that a lot in the 80s here in California, where a lot of people tried to raise horses in pens, and only to find out at 3 or 4 years old, as soon as they started training them, their legs just fell apart because they just did not have enough of the correct kind of work and movement as youngsters. So anyway, that's just something to think about. However, what I will say here is at the end of the tape, you get this horse to a good place, and that's where we need to get to sooner. That in the very end of the tape, the horse is finally stretched out and is finally lengthening its neck from the shoulder and letting itself lengthen out and down. Most of the time, it does not do that and holds itself too much back in the neck, though this walk is pretty good that we're starting here. And so the horse tends to walk pretty much pretty well, and it gets worse as you go up through the gates, is what I see here. So same thing here. I'd like to see really probably longer side reins on the horse and trying to get the horse longer and more swinging in the walk before you even go to the trot. Once again, I suggest you look at where you end up with this horse, and where you end up is a good place. And finally, in the walk, at the very end of this tape, the horse finally stretches out from the base of the neck and gets much longer. And that's what we want to have happen here, because the horse isn't really working through its back most of the time. Which is why you're having the problem with getting rid of the hunter's bump, because until you really get the horse swinging over its back and stretching and lifting its back, all the problems that you're having of bend and pull to one side and this sort of thing, the horse being one-sided, are all corrected by getting the horse to lift its back. If the horse hasn't lifted its back, it's going to be, permanently bent to whichever side it sort of naturally is. By getting the back to lift, then the horse can bend from side to side. So until the horse lifts its back, it will always be hollow on one side and stiff on the other side. Getting the horse to equalize that by lifting the back is what we're looking for. So starting out on your lunge here, this is not too bad, but the horse just simply isn't stretching enough. You can see what short steps the horse is making behind. The hind legs are almost left behind in the trot. You see the horse is coming, there's still much pressure on the hind legs, way too far behind the body. I would try to avoid the canter work as much as possible. Even riding, what I saw in your canter work before was not very productive, in that it was too hollow and stiff and is only going to exacerbate your problem. And same thing here on the lunge line. This horse isn't cantering well enough that this is going to do it any good. So try to stick to a walk a lot longer. See if you can't get the horse to walk out and really stretch that neck out before you go to the trot work. And more time. And as I said, I would stay away from this canter work unless the horse is just really fresh and it just needs to canter a little bit in order to settle down. But in the meantime, what we want to do is just come back and just slow everything down a little bit, starting with the walk and then into the trot. As I said, this canter here is very stiff-legged, and the horse is kind of bracing against its front feet, which just more than anything else is going to cause the horse to get sore. And that's not at all what we want. So we want to back up and get the horse really working over its back before we do anything else. So what you want to think about is just not doing anything that's going to make the horse stiffer than it is to start with. So that every step we take is a step in the right direction, so to speak. So once again, same thing here. This canter is just a little bit too stiff-legged. You can see how the horse is kind of bracing against its front legs as it's cantering. So that's not going to be real useful for the horse. And when it comes back to the trot, it's even stiffer and higher in the pull than it was to start with when you were just trotting it, and the hind legs are falling out further behind. So that tells me that canter work didn't do the whole horse a whole lot of good. Same thing here. It's very stiff-legged and unbending. Maybe a little bit better there, but too much canter work. Because remember what? Canter work builds wind. And trotting work tends to build muscle. So, thoroughbreds don't need to build a lot of wind. They build that very quickly. So the big thing we have to be careful with thoroughbred type horses is that we don't get them too fit too fast. And a lot of cantering will do that very quickly. If you've ever seen horses trained on the racetrack, it's amazing how little time they spend. They trot around, for 5 or 10 minutes in one direction, turn around and breeze, and they're done. The whole workout takes 15, 20 minutes at the maximum. Look how fit they are. So we must remember that when we work with thoroughbred horses, that we don't get them too aerobically fit too fast. So once again, I'd like to see you come back to the walk work more. Once again, these constant transitions like this. Maybe the horse just gets more tired, but it's spending too much time cantering hollow, which is only going to stiffen its back worse than it already is, and then it's going to take it longer each time to get back there. So once again, as I said, I'd like to see you just back up to a lot more walk work, working on the walk work. You can even take the horse and walk it down the long sides while you're lunging, this sort of thing, in straight lines. Try to get the horse longer and more swinging through the back. Like you do, once again, when we get to the end of this tape, we see that it looks really good. And that's where we'd like to be able to begin at that place. Now, if it takes going through all this work to get there, but what I'm saying is I think some of the work you're doing, like all that cantering work, is just going to make the horse stiffer more than anything else. So backing up to doing the trot work. And you can see when you go into the trot, this horse trots in a very, very short stride. Its hind legs are almost falling out behind it. So that tells me the horse is not really working through its back yet. Though once again, you're getting to a good place by the end of it. So you're working in the right direction. We just need to get that happening a little sooner so that more of our work is going to be more useful to us. Now, this is the kind of horse that, if you find that she's just really not stretching, this is the kind of horse that is often very, very helped by a sham bone. The sham bone lets the horse stretch out. A lot of thoroughbreds that are kind of ewe-necked, it really helps them because the side reins tend to draw the horse back and with its pull, and can get a horse like this kind of behind the bit a little bit, whereas the sham bone lets the horse stretch nothing but straight out and forward and down, and doesn't have any backwards pressure on the bridle, so to speak. It doesn't draw the pull over. So that might be a way to go with this horse if you find that, with the changes that I offer you today, that you don't find some better and quicker, so to speak, solutions to your problem. And once again, same thing here, all this cantering. This is just way, way too much cantering. This is, once again, you see how the horse cantering, look closely, see how the horse is bracing against its front legs when it's cantering, because it's not strong enough to canter over its back. So the cantering work is not going to help it. It might tire it out a little bit, which gives you the impression of, it improving something, but we don't want to have to tire a horse out every day to get to where we want to be. So once again, I would like to see you spend more time in the walk itself, really long time just trying to get the horse get relaxed and stretching out. For instance, like when you see these European exercisers that are so popular these days, and why I don't use exercises myself, you can see that when you put horses in those things, what I say is in a lot of cases these days, people who have those exercisers, that's the best training the horses ever get, because they walk in there, and if they have adjusted the speed at the right speed for the horse, they will relax and stretch down at a walk. And that's what we'd like to see this horse doing, is getting stretched more in the walk. Once again, all this cantering and bolting, bracing against its front legs is only going to add to the stiffening of the horse and add to your problem with the croup. So I would like to see you almost completely stop cantering this horse, both under saddle and on the lunge line, because I don't feel it's doing the horse any good at this level. We like to get horses, if you read the old Spanish riding school, they actually would suggested that you not canter a horse for the first full year of its work. They would lunge it for a full year without cantering at all. Then when you ask the horse to canter, it's got enough strength to do so. You see, all this horse is doing is cantering on the wrong lead at times. It's always bracing against its front legs in the canter. So as I said, you might be getting the horse tired out, but you're also going to get some other ill effects from that at the same time, which is an increase in the hunter bump, because we just want to get the horse working more correctly more of the time. So, we want to start out, even if that's riding, if you can get on this horse and ride it and get it to stretch better than you're doing here, unless the horse is just too high to do that. But once again, where you get it at the end of this tape is where you want to be more of the time. Now you can see the horse starts to stretch down there a little bit. It tries to a little bit at times. It's almost going a little bit too fast. Try slowing down a little bit. And once again, we need to get rid of all this cantering. Way, way too much cantering. This will just make the horse tighter than it will do anything else. So getting away from that will be the first step, getting the horse longer in the walk. So as I said, if you can get on the horse and walk it and get it to stretch out the way you have it at the end of this tape, that would be a better way to go. and get the horse really stretched out, even if you put the horse back on the lunge line afterwards. The main thing is to get this horse to stretch out for the neck, because all this cantering that you're doing, you see how the horse is bracing against its front legs, see how it's pulling again. You can see how even though it's got the side reins on, it's still bracing on the underside of the horse's neck. It's not really stretching into that contact. And you can see every time it comes back to the trot, the hind legs kind of fall out behind it. And we're just not achieving much here, except wearing the horse's legs out. And that's not what we want to do. So really, I would take a look at the shambone also. So if you find that, as I said, I'm suggesting you go back and spend much more time just letting the horse walk. And even if the horse is kind of an antsy horse, you may have to work on that quite some to get it to accept the idea. You know, if it's kind of thoroughbred that wants to come out and go, 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 go from the minute that you bring it out, that can be a challenge. And but it's one that you might start out on walking if it's better that way, you know. Now, where you started to get there in the walk was a little better towards the very end of that. I would like to see the horse walk on. It was actually just starting to want to stretch in a little bit. But once again, I feel like with the side range of this horse, this kind of horse is bending over in its neck, but it's not stretching out from the base of the shoulder, and that's what we need to see the horse do much more of the time. Same thing here back in the trot. It's very short-strided. Kind of bracing the lower neck quite a bit, not really reaching through and not stretching enough. So what we have to do is get this equation, you know, so that you're getting the horse working over its back much more of the time. For instance, in this tape, you know, the only time the horse really gets over his back is at the very last walk, is where the horse finally gets where it needs to be. So we want to find a way of getting to that place sooner and then working it up from there. And once again, much less cantering. Same thing in this direction. The horse is cantering and bracing against its legs and basically pulling up the inside of the bottom part of the neck there, kind of bracing itself a little bit. And that's not going to do the horse any good. Trouble with cantering, especially like that, when the horse is cantering hollow, it really tends to stiffen the horse a great, great deal. So I think what you're getting some benefits by the fact that you're sort of wearing the horse out a little bit by doing this, and maybe it's relaxing a little bit at the end. But if we've done 30 minutes of, you know, hollow work to get to the point where we can walk for 5 minutes and get the horse to stretch into the contact, we need to somehow reverse that equation there a little bit. So if that means getting on and just walking the horse at first, that would be the way to go, or trying to spend more time on the lunge line, just letting the horse work. Here, the same thing. The horse is just kind of running when you come back to the trot, then it's coming back into this kind of bracy canter. So much, much too much of this. Same thing here, just kind of hollow in quick steps. Oh, getting a little bit better there. There. Now, what I'd like to see you do there, now the horse is starting to walk a little better there. Now, what I'd like to see you do is would have stayed there. You were just about to get the horse to walk better about the time you stopped lunging. So get the horse deeper, deeper in the stretches, even if you have to spend a lot of time in the walk before you do anything else. And so we spend more time with the work. Correct. Now, once again, starting off here, this is not too bad a walk. At least the horse's neck is out pretty long here. It's not quite as good as it is at the end, but it's not bad. And she tends to want to come behind the bridle there a little bit. So we've got to get the neck longer. That's better as you come around through here. But she's still not releasing. You see, even here, the horse is almost bracing over. She's coming behind the bridle and kind of breaking over about a foot back from the pole. She's bending more in the neck than she actually is in the pole, and still not yet reaching out through the neck the way we want her to, though this is a little better here as it goes on. But still not quite there. Once again, look at where you get to at the end. So once we get that trot, the walk rather, that you get at the very end of this workout is where we want to start. And then from that position, we slowly bring the horse up. This walk is a little better here, getting a little bit softer. But once again, still just not quite long enough to really let not long enough in the neck, that is, to let the back swing through, to let the hind legs swing through. Now that turn you did there was very sharp. Once again, remember, we don't want to do anything that the horse can't physically do. So this horse at this level is probably not going to be able to turn. You know, want to keep your turns very wide and open. So we never want to lose the rhythm of the horse as we ride. And once again, you can see there as the horse goes by here how you know, how much damage there is to this horse's back, because it's quite hollow behind your seat there and has quite a pronounced hunter's bump, which, once again, we don't want that to turn into kissing spine because that will ruin the horse. So it's well on its way. Not too bad here, but still just needs to stretch out longer. It's not quite there yet. Still needs, it's bending over, but once again, see how behind the horse, how the bridle of the horse is more flexing in the neck than it actually is the pole here, because it's not really lengthening enough through the base of the shoulder to get the neck out where it belongs. So this trot is remaining kind of hollow and stiff and kind of stilted there, so to speak. Not really swinging yet. Though this is a really nice horse. When you get it working over its back, it's going to be a really nice mover. Same thing here, just too short, not really working over its back, not long enough in the neck yet. But you're getting there. That's better. You're working in the right direction, at least. There, now this is better. That's a little better. It's starting to get out a little further now. What you'll see is the longer you get the horse to lengthen the neck from the shoulder, the more swing you'll see through the back as the horse lowers. So the head and neck for this horse is still too high at this level. It still needs to stretch down lower. It's still not at a position where it can really engage its back yet. And that's what we're looking for, is to find that position that allows the horse to work through its back, and that is the height of the head and neck. You know, remember, thoroughbred horses were not bred necessarily to do dressage work. They were bred for galloping, and their necks they don't have that kind of neck like some of the warm bloods or some of these other breeds, where the neck comes more straight up out of the shoulders with a big sloping shoulder. Thoroughbreds tend to have a head and neck set that goes straight out of the body forward rather than up, you know, because of what they were bred to do, which is galloping. Now, that doesn't mean they can't collect. Once again, don't misunderstand. Any horse, you know, except for the most extremely straight hind-legged horses, can do some level of collection if they are developed to that point. Remember, collection means the lowering of the three joints of the hind legs. And now we have to have working gaits first once we have established the horse clearly over its back. But a thoroughbred horse built like this is never going to have the same head and neck position as some of these horses that you see today who have bigger sloping shoulders and the necks almost come straight up and out, like a Frisian or you know, some of these Andalusians and Lusitanos and things like that were bred for more of this work. This is a better walk as you come back here. Now that's the first time the walk is getting long enough, like that. That's looking good. That's what we want to start with. Unfortunately, you cut the tape every time just about the horse gets right. So where it was right there was really where you want it to work, and even lower from there. So get that, and then go on and do more work in that position. Same thing here. While the horse's head and neck is over, it's not working through its back in this position. Its gaits are too short, and once again, it hasn't lengthened through the shoulder yet. So remember, you can do a lot of work in the walk. Nino Oliveira used to say this is where we explain everything to the horse, that the walk is the foundation. So if you can't get the horse round in the walk, there's really not much, or at least, you know, stretching into the contact in the walk round at the level that it can. There's not much point in going into a trot. I mean, that's how I do it. If I can't get the horse over its back in the walk, I don't bother to trot, because there really isn't any point. Because once again, we don't want to do things we're going to have to undo, like you're doing with all of that canter there. You're doing so much canter on the lunge line with the horse that you're going to have to undo that at some point. Now, as I said, there may be some benefit that you feel in that the horse, you know, finally slows down and calms down a bit, you know, gets its energy out. But the problem is that's going to lead to the more stiffness, kind of what you have here in the trot. Yes, the horse is trotting and its head is over, but it's not really on the bit because it's not coming through its back at this point. So the same thing here. This trot work isn't going to do the horse very much good. We need to get the horse longer through the neck than it is here. If we kept riding the horse right here, nothing would ever improve because it's not really working over its back at this point. So once again, it's all about finding that place where the horse can work over its back and then working up from that. So I would like to see in your next video much more walk work with the horse stretching much more, much deeper into the contact and going through your lateral work in the walk. Same thing here, while the horse's head and neck is over, look how short the stride is behind. It's not really reaching through and swinging the way this horse could. Now, to an untrained eye, this probably doesn't look too bad. I mean, the horse is going, its head is down, which is what people want to see, or over, so to speak, but it's not reaching in the neck, and that's what I'm looking for. And you can see the horse gets a little irritated and swishes its tail a little bit. That's telling you it's a little bit uncomfortable in whatever it is you're asking it to do here. You know, we see horses in the show ring swishing their tails and pinning their teeth and grinding their teeth. That ought to say something to the judges more than it seems to do these days. You know, in the days of old, if you came in the ring with a horse grinding its teeth, you'd get a 30%. Nowadays, it doesn't seem to matter. Now, same thing here, just standing here, see how collapsed the horse's back is underneath you. Look at the hole behind the saddle. You know, so doing a lot of halts with a horse at this level really doesn't do you any good. So we want to get the horse in that rhythm that it can work at. I don't do many halts with horses at all until they become quite fully developed over their backs. I usually tend to halt them once at the end of a session, and that's about it, because just like what happened with you there, you came into that halt, and while the horse was standing fairly square in terms of its legs, its back was completely collapsed, and its hollow, its back hollow, and its neck was very ewe-necked there, standing there. So these kind of halts don't do you a lot of good. Same thing here. The horse is kind of strung out behind. It should be stopping with its hind legs much closer to the front leg, so to speak, and underneath itself. So doing transitions until the horse gets over its back doesn't do you a whole lot of good. Good. Now there's where I want the walk. So here at this end, that's a little better, just needs to be more active. At this very end here, you really get the horse finally to reach out like that. Now that's better. Now this is the way I want to see you walk. And if you can get on the horse and walk it like this rather than the lunging, if this gets it to that place better and sooner, then you're better off doing that if that's the case. As I said, I might suggest that you go to a sham bone with this horse on the lunging. I think it would help it. Once again, you see how severe that hunter's bump is on this horse, so you're really going to have to do some work to correct that so that doesn't end up, ruining the horse for life, which it will if the horse gets kissing spine, if it continues to go in that direction. So here, once again, walk is too slow and head and neck is too high. And you can see how the hind legs, it's kind of got that, like I'm being pulled out of mud. Like the horse's back legs are kind of stuck in something, so to speak. They're not swinging. This is getting better as it's going. So once again, before you make your transition here, for instance, I would have liked to see the horse get all the way longer. Same thing here, swishing his tail. And this canter is not going to do anything for you except stiffen his back. So we want to stay away from that. And once again, this horse looks, to some people would think this horse is on the bit. To me it is not, because it's not working over its back yet. Yes, its neck is over, but you can see how out of balance, and you start to go to the canter and kind of jiggles around. That's why you're feeling that wobbly feeling that you feel in the horse, because it's not really working over its back. And while this canter is fairly quiet, it's not a good canter because the horse isn't working over its back. It's got short little pepe le pew, as I call it, strides, or kind of bing, bing, binging along, so to speak. But that's not a good canter. It's not swinging enough over its back. So once again, it's not going to do you any good to do this kind of a canter and so much of it, especially with a horse at this level. I mean, you've spent, half of this session either on the lunge line or here cantering. And this horse, as I said, until you can get this horse stretching in the walk and trot, you really don't want to do much cantering. And then even then, you don't want to do much cantering until you can get the horse to swing. Remember, you should be able to stretch the horse in all three gaits. So, this is the kind of horse that could fool people who don't know what they're looking at, because yes, the horse's head and neck is over, like people think a dressage horse, and it looks like it's kind of on the bit, but it isn't really, because it isn't really working through its back. It's just got its neck drawn over, but the neck isn't reaching out from the shoulder as much as it should. Now, this is a little better as you're going on here. It's a little better, but still much too high, and still, once again, too much cantering work sitting through his back. And that's just kind of a bracy and stiff canter. You can see how dropped the horse's back is. But so, don't be fooled by the fact that the horse's head and neck is over and kind of looks like it's on the bridle. That doesn't mean it's working through its back, which this horse is not. Once again, you see every time you come back from the canter how short the back end is. It even shortens the horse up more. So other than tiring the horse out, all that cantering work is really not having a good effect and is only going to exacerbate your problem. Same thing here, just, a hollow canter that's not going to do you any good, regardless of whether the horse looks like it's on the bridle. Once again, the horse is only really on the bridle if it's working over its back. Horse can have its head and neck in many different positions. Some of them look completely behind the brit or not, or as this one, not too bad, but it's not really reaching out to the neck and not really working over its back. So the biggest takeaway for you here is to stop all this cantering. Way too much cantering. Go back to your walk work and your trot work. Get that correct. Don't just do this because it feels kind of good. And, you have a pretty good position up there and can sit. That's all good. But the problem is you're sitting through a hollow horse. And that's not going to help the horse at all. Once again, see, every time you come back to the trot after that canter, the trot's even worse than it was because it's very shortened up behind, because that's what you're doing. By sitting so hard and deep into this horse's canter, it's basically stiffening his back. Same thing here. He's not really swinging through the back. Yes, the neck is up and over, but the back is completely hollow. So you're riding this horse with its head and neck much too high for its level of back development. That's why it looks kind of disunited at times, especially when you see those downwards transitions. As I said, way too much canter work here. That's the thing you just got to get in your mind, that if the walk isn't right, there's not any point riding the horse to go to a trot work. So if you lunge the horse, get on and walk until the walk is correct. Then when you get the horse really stretching out in the walk, the way you do at the end of this, then go into your trot work, and then and only then. And it may take you from some days of doing that to get to the point where that's what you get, as opposed to what you're doing here, which is just a lot of hollow canter, which is not going to do the horse any good whatsoever. In fact, it's going to exacerbate that problem. And if this is how you normally ride, that's why you're continuing to have the problem of the horse being as stiff as it is and not developing over the back. The horse almost starts to trot out a little bit. This is a little better. There we go. Now that's some of the best trot work we've had. That's getting a little better. It's getting a little longer. Not quite there, but this is a lot better. There. Now it's starting to get out there. So you're getting to a good place. My point is that I just don't want you to go through so much not so good work, put it that way, that's going to stiffen the horse in order to get there. There. Now that's starting to be a good walk. That's starting to get, now it's just at the very end here. Now, you also see what happened there when you went forward and stretched the kind of to pet the horse on the neck. It kind of threw the horse out of balance. So sit up and get the horse stretching more into the contact here. Just at the very end here, you get to where I want you to be. Like this. Now the horse is starting to walk out a little bit. It's starting to swing. And see how the neck is going out and down and not over and curled. So this is what we want to get the horse to look like in the trot as well. You just have a little too loose a rein here, but if you took contact and let the horse stretch into it. But this is the best work that you do, is here at this very, very end. So this is where I want you to start, and I want you to get the horse like this before you ever go to the trot work. So much less lunging, much less cantering on the lunge and under saddle. I would completely stop doing that until you get the horse working better at the walk and trot, because as I said, that's only going to exacerbate your problem. So this is a better walk, and you see how the horse is reaching down and out and forward, and that's where you want the horse to get to. That's where we have to get the horse to, like that. Once again, look in this silhouette how hollow that horse's back is. So you've got to stop all that cantering work to improve that and really get this horse swinging and in this position before you do anything else. Once again, just watch these last few frames, because this is the best work that you do throughout this whole thing. So this is where we want to get this horse to in a walk before you ever go to the trot, and this is how we have to get the horse starting to trot. Once again, I highly suggest maybe you take a look at getting a sham bone, because that will help your lunging a great deal. A lot of these thoroughbreds, this one bends its neck over, but that's all it's doing on the lunge line. So getting something to help it stretch out, we need it to get to look like this position when you're lunging and when you're riding. Great work today. Keep up the good work. I look forward to seeing your next video. I think it's going to be much improved over this one. You're trying for the right things, and you're achieving at the very, very end. So now what we have to do is spend more time doing things correctly and less time doing things kind of halfway there, because they don't lead to anything but a stiff horse. Know that when you get the horse over its back, it's going to solve all the rest of your problems. Will Faerber from Art to Ride. Hope that helps. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.